Concordia is an institute that is primarily focused on the intersection between the public and private sectors, furthering cooperation between both sectors, and serving as a leading advocate in the world for public-private partnerships as a tool for social impact. When we're seeing enormous geopolitical shifts around the world, an ever-changing global economy, and issues and problems that, frankly, one sector, either public or private, can't necessarily address on their own. Collaborative governance, and more specifically, public-private partnerships, are a critical tool in addressing those issues.
So what would be an example of one?
First off, the most obvious public-private partnerships are oftentimes in infrastructure. So you hear a lot about public-private partnerships when it comes to new highways, for instance. There's a new toll highway built in Northern Virginia as a tool to combat some of the most congested traffic in the country, right? That is a public-private partnership. It's a joint venture by a private institution and a public institution. Another common public-private partnership is in disaster response. If you can take the entrepreneurial creative spirit of the private sector and match it with the scale of the public sector, so often your output is much better than if one sector was operating on something alone.
There's the summit that you've created. You've done something very extraordinary. Can you talk a little about what it is that you've done that's made this possible?
Well, I think first and foremost, do we know how to attract a very powerful group of people in a space that we design that's conducive to the development of public-private partnerships? Absolutely. Do people like George W. Bush, Joe Biden, or Mukhtar Kent of Coca-Cola feel that there is value to participating in both our annual summit, but also our events throughout the year? Absolutely, and that's an important piece. But for Concordia, there's two ways to look at it. On the convening side, we have established ourselves. On the institution side of Concordia, our objective is to build public-private partnerships that have social impact. So once that happens, I'll come back to you and say, I feel great about what we've accomplished.
How would you describe the relationship between Concordia and the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals?
Concordia's power rests in our ability to raise awareness. By starting as a convening forum, we started with our annual summit because our thought was we will build a global community of influencers. So we have convened a global network from around the world of influencers who come together not only every year during our annual summit during the UN, but also at a number of our other events throughout the year, including our summit we hold in Washington with the State Department and USAID in Washington, D.C., but also a summit we recently convened in Miami. We've convened summits in places like London as well. That community being brought together, so we can raise awareness. So when it comes to the SDGs and our relationship with the UN, we can raise awareness on these goals, right? And that's a very important piece to that. We can give a platform for private sector and public sector representatives to talk about why these goals are important and talk about the impact that these goals can have. So first and foremost, we're able to really complement the important mission of the SDGs.
So how did Concordia come to be?
In our studies at university, we really learned a lot about the power that public-private partnerships can play, and what governments and what multinational corporations need to think about going forward. Again, with this ever-changing global economy, what that means. We learned a lot about convening through a project that we did for interning for News Corporation on something called the Wall Street Journal CEO Council, which is an amazing forum held every year in DC. We devised Concordia, and it wasn't easy at the beginning, right? We started with nothing. We devised a pitch. We pitched it to literally everyone we'd ever met. Everyone we'd ever met said no. So then we, like most entrepreneurs, shifted strategy. And we said, we're going to have an event. We don't know whether 5 people are going to come or 5,000 people are going to come. We said that in April of 2011. By September 2011, we were hosting a forum of 120 leaders from both the public and private sectors coming to talk about the role of the private sector in combating extremism and to hear from President George W. Bush on what he felt he had done right and what he felt he had done wrong in engagement with the public, engagement with the private sector around the global fight against extremism and the war on terror. That then led us to really become an institute more broadly focused on public-private partnerships. And being a nonpartisan organization, our next summit in 2012 featured President Bill Clinton, who utilized public-private partnerships in his administration, but also laid a lot of groundwork for why now public-private partnerships are becoming much more the norm, both in governmental circles as well as private sector circles.
Congratulations on your work.
Thank you.
And your achievements so far. I know you're not resting yet.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing where it goes.
Thank you very much.